Shalom. I wanted to go ahead and put the calendar up along with a explanation as to how we're doing things. We look for the first visible crescent. And so we start our months based on the sighting of the moon. If you were to try to determine how to reckon your months based on the scriptures don't say, look for the first visible crescent or look for the conjunction of the moon or look for the full moon to start your months. We don't have it explicitly given to us in the scriptures. So therefore, in terms of that, we're forced to have to look back in history. And myself, I know from looking at scriptures that Yeshua, when he walked the earth, you know, he didn't have no gripes with the calendar of the day. He didn't, he kept his feast days and times the same time that the majority of Israel was keeping their days and times. So we're able to look back at the history, the record, and see when the people of those times kept their feasts and things that they did. And we're able to know based on that. Philo was someone who lived before and after Yeshua. He was someone who looked at what the people did at the times and observed Israel and their movements. And, he had commentary on it also, but he had commentary about what he observed Israel doing. If we look over here at Philo's writings here, where he's literally talking about the new moons, he says over here, this highlighted section, thirdly, because at that period, the more powerful and important body gives a portion of necessary assistance to the less important and weaker bodies, talking about the sun and the moon. For at the time of the new moon, the sun begins to illuminate the moon with a light which is visible to the outward senses, and then she displays her own beauty to the beholders. Okay, it's describing the first visible crescent. Okay, it's not even hard to understand that. From a principle standpoint, when we look at Genesis chapter 1 and 14, it says, "Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times and days and years." And so the thought process is that we look for the lights, the activity of the lights in the sky. And so with the years began from the nearest new moon to the equinox, the cycle of the sun. Historically, from a historical standpoint, again, we go to Philo, but to the seventh day of the week, he has assigned the greatest festivals, those of the longest duration. At the periods of the equinox, both vernal and autumnal in each year, appointing 2 festivals for these 2 epochs, each lasting 7 days, the one which takes place in the spring being for the perfection of what is being sown, and one which falls in autumn being a feast of thanksgiving for the bringing home of all the fruits which the trees have produced, and 7 days have very appropriately been appointed to the seventh month of each equinox, so that each month might receive an especial honor of one sacred day of festival for the purpose of refreshing and cheering mind with its holiday. So he's describing for you two feasts that happen and that correspond with two equinoxes, which he's talking about the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Feast of Sukkot. Okay, and now we can know that he's talking about Sukkot for two reasons. Exodus 34 and 22, and perform the festival of Shavuot for yourself, for the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. At the turn of the year, the feast of ingathering, which is the feast of Sukkot, at the year's end. That word is Tekufa, which is a revolution, that is of the sun, a course, lapse, circuit, come about, or end. So the circuit of the sun, the end of the sun's circuit, to the end of the revolution of the sun. Okay, and so Tekufa is something that we can look at and understand as being the equinox. And so over here, this is telling us that the feast of Sukkot corresponds with the fall equinox. Okay, and this is verified by Philo. This was the unexampled misfortune which befell Flaccus in the country of which he was governor, being taken prisoner like an enemy on account of the Jews, as it appears to me, whom he had determined to destroy utterly in his desire for glory. Here's the important part. And a manifest proof of this is to be found in the time of his arrest, for it was the general festival of the Jews at the time of the autumnal equinox, during which it is the custom of the Jews to live in tents. That right there is talking about Sukkot. Okay. And so we're able to see in the historical record these various things that give us these time markers to help us understand when the feast should be. And so when we look at our calendar, we're able to see that when we do this reckoning as we do, the feast of unleavened bread and the feast of Sukkot, they correspond with the spring and the fall equinoxes. Okay, so this is how we are reckoning these days. It seems that the historical record helps us to understand that Yeshua was keeping these days in this way. And so that's what we try to do. We try to follow after the master Yeshua and the things that we do the best that we know how. So we have these dates and times posted on our website. If you want to, look and see, and if you have any questions, of course, put them in the comments section. Leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button. If you have some kind of long question, probably the best place for that probably would just be an email. We have the email just scrolling down at the bottom of the screen there. And that's it for now. Shalom.